history has shown that people aren't successful because of brilliance. They're successful because of focus and passion. So we got to get focus and passion from these people. It's easy to fail. Success can be hard, dirty work.
Welcome, everybody, to the Pay It Forward podcast. I am one of your hosts, Austin Seward, along with my co-host, Keegan Walls.
Howdy, howdy.
And today, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Dave Skogen, who is not only the founder of Festival Foods, but somebody that I consider a friend and a mentor of mine, extremely inspirational business owner, entrepreneur, and a man that I truly look up to. So really excited to have Dave here today and be able to extract some of the wisdom that he has gained from years and years and years as a business owner and very successful business owner. So thank you so much for being here today, Dave.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Kind words.
Absolutely. So how we usually like to start out is if you want to give our listeners kind of the backstory of Dave Skogen and Festival Foods for those that maybe aren't local to the area. What's the story of Festival Foods?
Well, my father started the business in 1946. I was a 5-year-old boy, 2 brothers. And the uniqueness of the store that Dad bought, there was a house connected. You could walk from the first aisle into the supermarket, two lanes, 2 check lanes. And we had jobs back then that we don't have today. I mean, if you can imagine, all soda came in glass. There was no plastic. There was no cans. And so we had to sort pop bottles by vendor in the back of our home, which was connected to the store. And we had to package eggs in dozen containers because they came in 30 dozen containers. Potatoes came in 100-pound sacks. Dad would bust them open in the back. My brothers, one younger and one older, we could scoop up potatoes and put them in a bag, fill them up to the level, you know. So we had jobs back then that we don't have today, but the one thing that hasn't changed about the business is that our customers, our guests as we call them, still want us to serve as their agent for quality, price, and service. And when you think about it today, how they depend on us, the grocer, for some of the biggest events in their life, whether it be a birthday party or an anniversary or a wedding or a holiday, you know, they're depending on us. We got to serve them. And it's been a success. I mean, it's been enjoyable thinking about growing up. But all that time when I was growing up in this business, never did I think for 1 minute someday this store that Dad ran with 3 little boys running around with him with aprons on, that one day this would be mine and maybe we could grow it to something bigger and better. So I wanted to be a basketball coach. I went to UWL. I was a fair athlete in high school. I wanted to be a coach. I just really thought that was my calling. And so I go to high school, or to go to college, and flunk out big time. I wasn't there 2 weeks, and I knew it was over. I mean, I took 18 credits when I could have taken 12. Nobody telling me. My parents weren't really into whether I went to college or not. And I just took the easy courses. School was about playing basketball and baseball and football. And so when I flunked out, I walk into the house or the store, house connected, and Dad says, "What are you going to do now?" And I said, "I don't know." I thought he meant, "What are you going to do? Summer's on. What do you want to do?" But I think he knew that I failed. I was no longer going to be a coach. As it ends up, I'm coaching thousands of kids, thousands of adults. So I still have that coaching thing in me. It wasn't necessarily good for me early on in my career because I got to be maybe a little tougher than I should have been. You know, we talk about being firm but likable. I was heavy on the firm side, you know, but I've learned through the years that, you know, to be kinder and more gentle with people. And, you know, before I tell Keaton that are we behind today? The produce department doesn't look fresh. And before I tell him that or ask him that, I'm going to say, "How was your weekend, Keaton?" Oh, good. You know, we went up to Lake Geneva and boated. And yeah. By the way, what's up with the case today? Oh, I got a guy that's sick, and so I'm learning. I'm still learning. I'm 81 years old, and I haven't stopped learning.
That's great. So festival started with a house connected to the store, and how many stores and employees does festival have currently?
We have 40 festivals, and 2 of them in the grounds. We'll have 42 before the year's out. And but I don't put a lot of emphasis on how many stores we have. I always say we got one store 40 times. That one store has its own culture, its own identity, and its own community. But 40 stores, man, well, your dad be proud, and this type of thing. Some of the stores haven't arrived yet. They're not all big successes. And, but yeah, it's one store 40 times.
So what did that transition look like when you came back to your dad and he said, what do you want to do?
Well, he said, Grandpa's going to retire. I jumped in the meat department, and I was there 13 years. But it was a great experience for me because I found out what I was all about. I was clean and neat. I knew how a store should feel, a meat department should feel. And I never worked back there. Grandpa's going to retire. I grab an apron, put my coat in the house, start walking around like I'm the boss, maybe a little chip on my shoulder. And I cleaned the glass on the windows, and I cleaned the scale. I took the sawdust off the floor, and I didn't allow smoking in the meat room. Customers could smoke. Our meat block, about the size of this table, had cigarette stains all the way around it. Think about that change today. And I said, Grandpa, we don't need to do this anymore. If they need to smoke, they can go in the back room. Now they got to go outside. But all of a sudden, I found, man, I can really be good at this. I know how that department should look. And I happen to have a great supervisor working for Gateway. His name was Bob Loberg, and he kind of taught me how to cut and how to merchandise, but a lot of it was right there, and I never knew it. I never looked at Grandpa's meat department. It didn't look very neat and clean, and say, boy, if I was back there, I'd fix that. But once I'm back there, all of a sudden, hey, think what would happen if we changed this, made it feel better for the customers. And so that was kind of a real change in my life. I said, hey, I can do this. And I can honestly say, after I semi-retired, that there was never a day back then where I thought, oh, man, I can't wait till the weekend. I had Wednesdays off, worked every Saturday, because that's how I grew up with my dad, just working. He just did the work. And you felt so fulfilled with what you were doing that it was never a job. It was just, a great experience of serving people or a higher purpose, It was never about the money.
Yeah. So how do, tell for our listeners that don't know, tell more a little bit about the core values of Festival, and how do you said 40-some stores, but it's one store 40 different times. How do you replicate the culture and the core values amongst all of those different stores?
Well, we're going to hire people of character, first of all, and be very careful. When we moved to Milwaukee, for example, and we've got 4 stores there and a few in Madison, that same culture that we believe in, putting people before profits, and really serving the customer better than our competition. We knew we were never going to be the cheapest store in town. When Walmart came to town, and then Woodman's, these people are the price leaders, and we know it. And they have buying power that we don't have, even as a 40-store company. But we better be really, really good. We better be excellent at having that customer say, I just like what happens to me when I come in that store. I just brighten up. I look at fresh, and I look at smiles, and people that appreciate my business, people that I trust, people that I know give back to the community. So how do we take that to Milwaukee and Madison and Green Bay? one store at a time. And I'm not saying we've been successful in all those either by any means. Every store is going to look like Onalaska or Homeland or La Crosse or behave. They all got a separate culture. Mm-hmm. I believe in our store with 13 separate departments: meat, bakery, deli, produce, natural, organic, grocery. There's a different culture with the people that run those departments. And we found that out later on in life, where we get a guy that's working produce and he's just kind of getting burned out. He's been 10 years there, and he can just see he doesn't have a bounce in the step anymore. And so we talked to him about what's going on. And I don't know, I'm just getting tired of produce, and I don't want to be a store director, but I don't know, I'm getting burned out. How about being a meat? If you can manage a produce department, you can manage a bakery or meat department or deli. How about a change? And so we have a chance in the grocery business to do that. Move somebody to a position where they get re-energized and find a new kind of career. They're now leading less people or more people in a whole different commodity, So that's a tough job. I get asked that a lot. Well, how do you bring the culture from Onalaska or La Crosse to Madison? I'm not going to lie to you. The culture is different in Madison than it is in La Crosse. And they don't know us from a good grade of meat when we come to Madison. So it's a little more work than if we built another store in La Crosse or Ullman or whatever. They know what we're all about.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain a little bit about the Boomerang Theory, of where that came from? I think that relates to this. And
I tell people when I present that it's about, I steal a lot of ideas. I mean, I've just never been smart enough, and I've never been ashamed to take. Sam Walton, for example, said, if we come within 10 tile of a guest, we're going to greet them. Hello, good morning, finding everything okay? Cute little baby you have there. So we stole that. And a guy in Ireland, his name was Fergal Quinn. He had 7 little grocery stores. And I knew him through an association of retailers from around the country. And Fergal wrote a book on crowning the customer. He called it the Boomerang Theory. So I stole the idea, and thinking I won't have to ever tell him I did it. And one day it broke in a trade magazine, a Festival Foods Boomerang Theory. And so Fergal calls me up. Hey, David, my friend, what I showed you? This showed me that you got a boomerang theory there. And I said, oh, Fergal, I'm sorry I didn't let you. No worries, he said. But the idea is that every business decision we make, when we hire somebody or separate from somebody, when we price an item, drop the price, raise the price, is based on this question: will it bring the customer back? Will they pay another 50 cents a pound for this? Will they accept this meat manager, leader of the meat department, after Bill retired? We got to be thinking about the guest, not about whether we like the guy. How will he be accepted by, our average store has 18 to 20,000 people who come through every week. There's no other business, a bank, a restaurant that has anything close to that. So you think about the chances you have to influence people. It's tremendous. And so we got to make sure that we've got the right person in the right seat in the bus. Another idea stolen from Jim Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great, I mean, I'm not shy about that. I mean, Jack Welch in his book Winning said, if there's one thing I attribute to my success, it's the fact that I practice candor. He says, candor unclutters things. That makes sense. It does. If I'm honest with Keaton here about the way he dresses, or the way he maybe talks negative about the company or an employee in the company in front of the rest of the team, if I'm not honest and open with him about that as a teammate, then I'm being deceitful. It's not fair to you. And so I love Jack Welch's comment. Be candid. I'm pretty candid. We got people, and I try to have our leadership team not be fearful about that. I want to know that if they hear the truth, they'll get mad for you a couple of days, but they'll get over it. But if I don't know how you feel about me, I know how you feel about Bill because, man, you go to lunch with him all the time. You're always talking sports, but I don't know how you feel about me. And I'm just guessing that you're not crazy about me. I'm not as good as Bill. That happens all the time. We all have a human need to be needed. Make me feel important, appreciate me. And that's the job of the leader of that department or that store. Make me feel important. Mm-hmm. We're running around as managers, we're trying to help them stock the lettuce and clean spot mop the floor because, well, we're showing our workers that our teammates that we work too, we get our hands dirty at the expense of a teammate not really being recognized as somebody important. That takes time.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Keegan.
Well, I was just going to ask, you talk a lot about, obviously, the whole focus of any business, but yours specifically, you talk so much about the importance of the customer, and you've said, we have this time of 18, 20,000 plus people come through our doors, and it's about what can we do to keep them and make them come back? Do you have some things besides just hiring the manager or whatnot, or ideas or practical things? Because I think everybody has like a poster of we care about the customer, but you guys, customer service is top notch and it's above the rest of them. But every business talks, but maybe can't quite walk the walk as well as you guys have. What are some things or ideas that you guys have discussed or implemented that have put you above everybody else seemingly wanting to care for customers? You guys just care for customers better.
Practice, passion, focus. If we really believe it, not just play lip service to, being a servant leader. If we show it when we work, when we handle pressure situations. But I just think if that's the soul of your business. I can tell you that Woodman's business, if he's not lower price on every item in the supermarket, that's a bad day. And Mr. Woodman will come through our store on occasion. And if he sees a price that maybe we're beating him on, someone's going to hear about it. That's their passion. If we see an employee stocking bananas, he's heard all about the Boomerang Theory, he's heard all about 10-tile rule by Sam Walton, and he's stocking bananas, and there's a customer that's almost touching him on the side here, and he's just pretending like he doesn't see him. I got to get these bananas, then I got to go get the grapes out here. I got to keep production going. It never even recognizes the lady who's wondering if there's some riper bananas in the back. But this guy doesn't even want to talk to me, so I'll just go without, or I'll pick them up at Quick Trip on the way home, These aren't ripe enough for me. So we got to get him to talk, and we're going to hold him accountable for it.
Yeah. What's the balance between holding somebody accountable and micromanaging them? Because I think there's a line there, right? But at what point does it become micromanaging versus holding somebody accountable?
Good question again, and I'm not sure I have the answer, but I tell you what, I think micromanaging is underrated. He micromanages their company, or, you got to set up, you got a playbook and you got some rules. I like to call them recipes. His recipe you can change, rules you can't very easily. But if we say 10-tile is a big part of our culture and you don't comply, that's a bad day for us. And we're going to hold you accountable. So the difference is you might say that's micromanaging because we're going to call you out, We're not going to embarrass you in front of a teammate or a guest, but we'll find a way to call you out. In fact, we got our loss prevention team that's in the store watching for shoplifters, he's also watching to see if our employees are tentiling. And if they're not, he's going to write it down, and he'll give it to the store director and say, this kid in produce, I didn't see him tentile one time. I watched him for 10 minutes, and people all around him not tentiling. So somewhere we haven't communicated with that guy because he doesn't have an understanding, plain and simple. So you got to go back to the person that's training. That might be the produce manager, might be his assistant or her assistant. So we're going to go to her first and say, we got a problem with Keaton. This report was just written up, and he passed on tentiling anybody in a 10-minute period. There were people all around him, and he would just head down, stocking. I'm productive. I kind of like this, but I had this people thing. So he doesn't get it. So we're gonna hold him accountable. And if some people would say that's micromanaging, that's bullying, you're too hard on that kid. That's a skill too. We got to learn to be calm and point out the fact that we taught you about tentile rule, why it's important to our culture. And you know what, Keaton, if you don't get that down, because you're on the floor an awful lot. You're not in the back washing produce. I mean, you're out here with them. You look the role. I know you can smile because when you interviewed, you had a big smile on your face, but you don't show it out here. And so we got a gap between performance and standards, Keaton, and we're going to close that gap. We're going to do 3 months. I'm going to weigh in with you every 10 days, 12 days. We're going to see how that's going. I want to hear some stories, and we're going to be watching. And if you don't get that in 10 days, we're either going to move you to a night shift where you don't have engagement with customers, or we love you and we'll miss you. You don't get to work here anymore. And we say it with a calm voice.
Yep.
He goes home and maybe tells mom that Mr. Skogen yelled at me or whatever, but you got to do what you say you're going to do. If you're going to hold people accountable, if you're going to win with culture of friendliness, then you got to practice it. Not just one or two people. Everybody's got to do it. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
That's our biggest challenge, to get that produce guy and their assistant to do what they said they would do. Loss prevention shouldn't be noticing that. You should have seen that long before this happened.
Right.
We got a guy here, and it's just, maybe he's in the wrong department. Maybe she's back room cleaning up, or maybe even cutting meat if he's 18 or older.
Would you say most of the time those conversations lead to somebody making a correction and they just didn't know, or most of the time people who are acting that way are doing that knowingly and ends up leading to termination?
I think they're doing that knowingly. I think they just flat out, when we interviewed that person, knowing he's going to be produce, knowing he's going to be out on the floor 90% of his time, he doesn't have, or she doesn't have, that personality.
Yeah.
So we got to either develop it or find another, backroom job for him, cupping salads or cutting vegetables up.
Yep.
He'd probably be real productive. But if he just can't get that down where he's going to say, "Good morning, ma'am," But if we screen right, if we hire right, we got that person we know can do it. But this guy opens some eyes, and you say, how did he get through? He just flat out has no personality. He can't play second base for us. We got to put him in right field because we don't have a lot of time. And maybe that's what he wants,
Right. Or like Keegan, he needs to go back to the bench.
Yeah. Put him on the bench. And maybe we have to trade him with the competition.
Right.
There you go. Yeah. No, I think that's really good. I think, leadership. Well, you speak culture. You say we're going to do this. Then that's a true sign of leadership. Of we're saying these are our core values. We're going to hold our people to the core values. Otherwise, you have no core values.
So I think this is a good transition into servant leadership. And the basis of servant leadership is meeting legitimate needs, not wants. And that's exactly what you're doing with those employees. They don't want to hear that. They just want to be left alone and do their job and not be held accountable and get their paycheck and go home. And but that's not what they legitimately need if they want to be an employee of Festival Foods. So maybe servant leadership has kind of turned into a fad topic lately, but I know Dave has been about servant leadership far before it became really popular. So maybe talk a little bit about your journey of learning about servant leadership and where that came from, who introduced you to servant leadership.
Servant leadership was introduced to us by Jim Hunter. He wrote the book, The Servant. And I didn't read a lot of books back then. I think I was 50. And somebody from our wholesaler gave me the book, put it on my desk, and said, you should read this. It's a required read in our company as a wholesaler. So I said, okay, I'll give it a whirl. Ironically, I'm flying to California in 2 weeks to a conference that our wholesaler is having. And I'm flying solo without wife or anybody. I'm just nobody else in the company. So I got time to read this book from the time we took off La Crosse to the time we landed in California. I go in the hotel, I check in, cocktail hour, now we're going to go sit down and eat, and then we're going to listen to a speaker. There was no notice who was going to be. Here it is, Jim Hunter. I'm thinking, wow, I just read his book. And I'll tell you, he's got 1 hour up there, and he just blew me away. He was just absolutely good. And you know the rest of the story. He's been with us for 25 years now, 26 years. We brought him to the Turbo to share with the community on 5 different occasions. But it's passion and focus. I couldn't wait to get behind the screen, behind the stage, because I was going to meet him. And I was going to have my business card ready, and I would say, would you be interested in joining us once a year at our festival college, what we call it? We meet in the Dells, and we take all our leaderships, people, 15 per store. And Jim agreed to do it, and since that time, we've just learned so much from him that it's contagious. And, you know, he keeps drilling into us that, you know, you get the whistle around your neck and become more of a coach instead of a doer, you know, just stocking the shelves and stuff. Become a coach. These people need to know they're needed.
Yep.
And that's your job. And so that's how the servant leadership thing started. And, you know, when you break it apart, which Hunter did, you know, a servant is one who identifies and meets legitimate needs of other people. So this kind of produce that I previously talked about, he's sitting in his position for maybe 6 weeks now, and he hasn't figured it out yet. And he's not real sure he's in the right seat. Now, somebody in that department should identify this guy's not getting it yet. So we're going to have a talk about the gap between performance and standards. And now we come a lead because we identified a legitimate need. This guy will never make it, and I care about him. I care about our customers. So the legitimate need is I got to sit down with him as his leader, or my assistant will, and we'll just have a calm conversation about the gap between performance and standards. That's what servant leadership is about. Leadership is a skill learned and acquired of influencing people to action. That guy that's going to meet with Bill, the produce guy, has got to have influence. If I don't like the guy, if he's a backstabber, a womanizer, whatever the case may be, it's hard for me to listen to his words because I hear a lot of bad stuff about him or her, you know, and that's happened. No influence, you're just taking a walk, you know, you got the title, you got the pay, you know, you feel so good about it, but it becomes all about you. And we discuss people, you know, what does success really mean? And I know that's one of the questions you were going to bounce on. I'll just jump into it.
Yeah, for sure.
We learned that success is a process that we experience over time. So is failure. It doesn't happen with one kind of business, one kind of store you opened up and, man, it's successful. It's over a period of time that you have this success. History has shown that people aren't successful because of brilliance. They're successful because of focus and passion. They're doing something they absolutely love. I can tell this young man here is looking at this as a career. Probably a college student, right? And he's just thinking, he's wondering, if I was doing this, what Keaton should have done is this, or something. And he's figuring it out. Can I be doing this? This really looks like fun. You give it an opportunity to be here and watch it. So we got to get focus and passion from these people. It's easy to fail. Success can be hard, dirty work. It's just continually reminding people more than teaching them that this is how we behave here. And that's how it's been working for us. Every day, we got to play it out. Starts all over the next day. We've been in a great industry. The wind to our backs and luck. We've had some luck that I could spend a half an hour talking about. If you don't attribute luck to some of your success, your real estate business, you're giving yourself way too much credit.
Yep. For sure. Agreed. When we met with Jim in Oshkosh, I remember he said, "Hey, nothing I'm going to speak on today is new. Everything that I'm going to say is stuff that you already know. I'm just here to remind you to do the right things, to teach you, to remind you things that you already know." And that's so true. There's so many people that are looking for like the key to success, or give me this one thing that I can do that's going to make me successful or get me to the next level. And you know what I mean? There's
magic bullet.
For sure, exactly. And that's what our society values now.
In school,
yep.
I'm a good-looking guy. Man, I'm just let's go.
Yep.
Wherever I go, I'm going to be successful.
Yep.
Because they've been since I was born. They cooed and wanted to hold me and baby me, and then I got to be an athlete, and everybody's just recruiting me, telling me how good I am, and I'm in the paper all the time.
Yep.
Now it's running time. The 3 phases of life: learning, earning, and returning. Mm-hmm. I'm in a returning phase. You guys are all in the earning phase of your life.
Yep.
And now it's time. You're going to be daddies and moms and bosses quicker than you can imagine. All of a sudden, someone's going to be reporting to you.
Yep.
And it'd be nice to figure it out. Know in advance that I got to be candid. I got to meet legitimate needs of people. They need to feel needed, just like I do as your leader. I want my boss to feel I'm valuable. And if I'm not, he better tell me what I got to do, because I want to be great.
Yep. Maybe talk a little bit more, Dave, about being in the returning phase of life. What does that look for? I mean, for the people that are in the La Crosse area, a lot of people have known you for your generous donations and philanthropic ventures. What's the driver behind that? Tell me a little more about that.
Well, I think the returning phase can start with some people at 60, and it probably started with me when we turned the company over to my wife and I did to our son. So now I wasn't calling all the shots, and I had to sit back and hope everything went like I expected it to go from my son. Sometimes it was real easy to accept. Sometimes it wasn't. But I don't know. It looks to me like, in my case, we found joy in giving. I mean, I never knew what our company was worth. I mean, I didn't care. I didn't think about selling it. I thought you just gift it to your kids. No, you can't do that. Government will let you to pay taxes, So, but you can discount it to your kids, your siblings. And so we're going to gift this, or we're going to try to gift it, but we can't. So Mark ends up with the stores, and Barb and I end up with a pile of money that we never had an idea what would be. So we're thinking, this was worth this probably 20 years ago, and we didn't even know it. We drew a nice salary. Now what are we going to do? And we just decided we're going to find joy in giving, And there's always things that come up. The Boys and Girls Club's going to have a new facility, and the YMCA's building this. Gunderson and Viterbo are doing this. So always people coming after you. And the more you give, the more they keep coming after you. And but we found joy in that, that being able to do that. A little bit of a unique situation in that because of Mark's success, his two grandkids or his two children are going to be okay. We don't have to worry about them, leaving them something or paying their tuition or whatever. So we just kind of think about what can we do. Dash Park was one of the things. The Boys and Girls Club at Holman was another. And that's really cut that pile of money down to, I'm going to say almost nothing, but we got to start slowing down because if we happen to live to be 90, we may be telling a lot of people, no, I'm sorry, we want to die broke, but we're not ready to die. And so that's the returning phase. And to mentor, this is part of returning phase. I didn't sign any contract. I'm not being paid to do this, but there's joy in doing it. There's joy in saying maybe some listener, or somebody in the student body at UWL that's listened to this and said, man, I needed that. I needed that accountability piece or accepting change. I mean, I never looked at change like he looks at change. And I took some good notes, and I'm gonna practice some of these things. Hunter always teaches us that 10% of the audience is going to agree with what you said and do something about it, either at home or at work. As a boss or as a husband or wife, they'll change something. And change is just inevitable. We're going to, we change, our body weight changes, our hair changes, a lot of things change, and we just learn to accept it. And in that journey of being the earning phase of your life, a lot of things are going to change that maybe you don't like. Your building is going to get sold, or you have a fire, or something happens and you got to be prepared to handle it. It's just part of life, part of the journey.
Yeah. How have you handled change, just in whether that's business, culture, through the years owning festival, whether that's change of a new competitor comes in? What are some keys to you guys as a company and you personally handling change?
I think personally I love change. I'm a big Packer fan like you guys probably are.
I'm sorry to disappoint you.
And I can remember when Favre was doing his thing about leaving the Packers, and I was excited. Oh, I wanted him to go. And I loved the guy. I thought, but what are we going to get for him? What's this new guy, Rodgers, going to be like? I was excited. And I'm excited now about the Packers because it's change.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for Jordan Love, and I'm willing to accept the fact that maybe it's 50-50 that it'll be anything close to Rodgers and Favre. But I'm going to be watching intently, as everybody else will, to see how well he does, how well he learned his procedures and behaviors of a good quarterback. So change is, think about it. Can you be a better spouse, a better employee, better boss if you don't change something you're presently doing? No. Like Hunter teaches us, nothing stays the same. You're either becoming a better dad or a worse dad. Better spouse, worse spouse. Better boss, you're not staying the same. And so we got to accept change. We're going to accept it or be victims of it, because just by definition, if you're not changing, you're going backwards. And
so you talked about before how luck plays an impact, right, on success, right? You have to have a little luck sometimes to be successful financially or in business. So what would you recommend to somebody who's maybe achieved some success, and how do they maintain humility throughout that process? How have you maintained humility throughout the process of not having a lot of money and to growing great wealth and a big business? How have you maintained humility throughout that?
Well, I can tell you this. Success achieved without humility is going to be short-lived. It's a one character trait that when people say, what do you look for when you hire people? Experience? No. Energy? What are you looking for? I want to know the guy's humble, They understand their strengths and their weaknesses. Humble people do. The opposite is arrogance, right? Nobody wants to work with somebody it's all about him. He uses I and my team, sports people all the time. My team, my guys. They're not his guys. They're my teammates. But we got to just focus on that word humble. Getting over yourself. You have not arrived. And if you believe you have arrived, do the blank piece of paper test that I talk about often. Give it to your spouse, your children, your boss, maybe another coworker that you trust, not necessarily your best friend. And on the top of it, you just write, what is it about me you would change if you could? That's a big one. Now, if you humbly say that to somebody, I know we're good friends. I want you to be honest. I know I have stuff. My husband tells me that, or my school teachers told me that for years, that I got stuff. What's my stuff? You've worked with me now for 5 years. What is it? I want to know. And so I've been doing this when I present, right? So I was at a chamber breakfast, and I'm watching people, where the heads are going like this, or where they're just deer in the headlight, what time is it? Oh, balls. I'm not changing. I got 10 years to go. Nothing's going to happen with me. I'm not changing. I don't have to. Nobody's told me I have to. So get to the next piece. Well, when I was done with that chamber meeting, I'm calling Hunter on the way home. I said, Jim, you know how I respect your leadership, being a leadership mentor for me, and how you speak and drive home your points. I said, I just came from a chamber meeting, and as you know, I've done this for about 5 years, maybe a dozen times a year, most of it local. But I've never seen anything like this. This group of men, mostly, were just like, some of them were standing. It was a small room. They were standing all around. And so I really get a good chance to look in their eyes. And it was just like deer in the headlight. It was enough that bothered me enough that I had to call him and say, what's going on? And he started laughing. He says, Dave, you haven't been paying attention. Remember when I talked to you guys about for some people, this is painful stuff. They don't want to hear it. And I've also told you only 10% of the people in that meeting that you had they're all going to agree on what you're saying. But only 10% of them will have takeaway that'll help them at home or at work. Be a boss. 10%. So if you had 100 people there, do the math. 10 people are going to be, I did that blank piece of paper thing, and it really worked. So I'm doing this one at the chamber. The good news of it was I'm in the store one Saturday, and a guy comes up to me, introduces himself, and he says, I was at chamber function, and I really appreciate that little challenge you gave us about the blank piece of paper test. And I did what you said. I gave my family 2 days to write what they wanted to and turn it in. They didn't have to do it right here in front of me. And I want to tell you what my daughter said. My daughter told me, I wish you'd stop swearing at Mom. This guy's telling me, I don't even know him. I've never seen him since, that he swears at his wife. And his kid, it meant enough that he wanted to share it. His kid finally had the courage because Dad gave him an opportunity to say, what's my stuff? Ironically, 2 weeks later, another guy didn't recognize him. Was at the chamber thing. Thank you very much. I did that blank piece of paper. Neither one of them did it at work. They only did it at home. And the boy said, and both these cases, they were like 10 years old, these kids. I wish you'd spend more time with my sister. It seemed like you do all your time with me. Wow. And the guy was just so joyful that he heard that. Now, you think they live together, they sleep together, they dine together, They go to church together maybe, but they don't talk.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, I love that. That's a great challenge.
It's so simple.
Yeah. I'm going to give it like 3 months, though, so I can work on some of those changes, and then, I'll give it to my wife and see how it goes.
There's another piece that Jim introduced us to, and it had 36 questions on it. And we had to fill it out on ourselves. HR gave it to 8 other teammates that were closest with me. My son and my assistant were 2 of them, so I could read their handwriting. So I filled it out, and you had 4 boxes. The first box was strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree. And then you had a composite score on these 36 questions. One was, do you backstab? Do you hold people accountable? Mm-hmm. Number 6 was, are you a good listener? I put agree. All 8 of these people, including my son and my assistant, put disagree or strongly disagree. You talk about blindsided. And we also had to have a plan. Now we got to go to the panel. 300 people we had at that time. I was 50 years old. Had to go to the panel. My son was on it, Jim Hunter's on it, and I'm on it. So I'm going to the panel with 2 people. And Jim says, I had to go first. And we all had different times in a 3-day period, 20 minutes. He said, Dave, I thought I knew you. And you're not a good listener. That blindsided me. You know, as long as I've known you, I thought you're a good listener. I think I did too, Jim, as you can see. What are you going to do about it? So we're all wearing white shirts back in those days, and I had embroidered on my shirts, listen first. The other guys had stuff. Number 1 complaint, blindsided, was accountability, not holding people accountable. Number 2 is backstabbing. 1 and 2. Listening, I don't know how that voted with 300 people, but so people ask me, well, are you a good listener today? And I'm better than I used to be, but not as good as I want to be. I really concentrate. Jim Hunter, when I introduced him to Maggie, my assistant, about 5 years ago, I'm watching him because I'm standing right there, and it's a dinner before Jim's going to speak. And he cocks his head like this, like you are right now. And he's looking at her. And, I mean, he is not anywhere near somebody that's standing next to him to say hi. That's what I was doing. They wrote on there, Dave, I want to talk to you, and you're coming in the store because I called you and said, hey, I got to see you about something. And just reach me on the floor because we don't have to go in an office. Okay, so I do. He says, as you're talking to me, you're looking over my shoulder, waving at customers. Hey, Bob, disrespectful. And worse yet, you cut me off before I'm done telling you. You start giving me your side of the story. That was me at 50 years old, CEO of 15 or 20 festival stores. That was worth, man, I can't put a price tag on that because I was ashamed, but yet I was so anxious to correct that. I try the tilt my head thing when I meet people. Say something to them besides, nice to meet you. Brewer fan, huh? Or something, just be present with them.
Yeah.
This big, arrogant CEO festival comes in, and he's just giving me the old standard, hey, how you doing? And then when I start telling you my story that my dad passed away, you're not really listening to me. Wow. And I'll guarantee you, everybody in this room has got something they should change.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't know what it is. I never knew that I was a poor listener. I never knew I was looking over shoulders. I came home from work that day, and Barb knew what was going on, my wife, and she said, how'd your little interview go? And I told her, and she said, oh, I could have told you that. So you go to a meeting, and you're he's talking to you, and you're just looking over, oh, I got to go see Austin. Hi, Austin. And I'm just not with you because arrogance, maybe.
But I think
I'm more important than you are, right? I got to see a lot of people here.
Yeah. But I think I think that's humility though. It's humility to ask and to do the paper test because it's going to take humility. I need to be willing to hear the responses. But then it takes humility to go, I'm going to accept what you said and I'm actually going to work on it and change.
When your peers tell you, I don't have a boss at this time except my wife. But when these 8 people all said disagree, there's something to that story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not 7, all 8 of them.
For sure.
Stuck out in their minds. They got to question number 6. Terrible listener. So, change. We got to change, or we're going to become victims of. I mean, we're not going to grow. We're not going to get to where we want to be. We're not going to fulfill what our Creator asked us to be, whether it be a doctor, a lawyer, a grocer. We all got work to do, and we're all the same profession, serving people.
Absolutely. So to end us off, Dave, if there was one thing that our listeners could start doing on a daily basis that would move them in the direction of living that more successful life or that process of being successful, what's one thing they could do?
I'm going to give you a couple of them.
Okay.
One of them is to just study what humility really is and ask yourself some hard questions. Am I humble, or do I come off kind of arrogant? Do I let people know that I've not arrived, or do I have all the answers to everything in my little department? So practice humility. The other one is that about 5 years ago, somebody turned me on meditation. So they gave me this app, or told me about this app called Headspace. And I will tell you, for 5 years, I probably missed a dozen days in 5 years. And it totals up the number of minutes, so I can do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20, some are 30. But I'm generally at 15 minutes. And I'm listening to stuff about humility and being present. Concentrating on what you're doing, what right now, not what went wrong last night, the terrible meal you had, or the argument you got with your wife, or something that's coming up tomorrow, my vacation or whatever. I mean, you got to live in the present. And I would tell them that, to work on that. And if it takes meditation to do it, give it a shot. I mean, it's $11 a month, I think. I have somebody in my brain and teaching me to be aware of being here with you guys, But you got lives and you got things to do, and to be present with you, not thinking about time is it, I got to get out of here, and is this really working? Would I do this again? I got that big meeting with so-and-so next. And that's one that I really have to work on besides my listening. I mean, I'm better than I used to be with that listening, I'll guarantee you. And I don't wear it on my sleeve anymore, but I'll tell you what, it's humbling.
Yeah.
When 8 people tell you that you're a terrible listener, CEO of 15 stores.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually have one more question. Because you talked about the blank piece of paper, if somebody were to write on there, Dave Skogen, at the end of your life, after everything you did, and they get to write it down, how do you want your legacy, your life to be remembered?
That I was a giver, that I ran with the help of so many people. Really good store. A store that made shopping enjoyable. It's not about the money. Never has been, never will be. Money's just like a flow, like water. And we're just mere trustees of this money. To hoard it. I want people to know, I told Barb when we got that chunk of money for the sale, I said, I want to die broke. I really do. I want my Social Security check to be what I live on. Now, I'm doing a pretty good job of it. It's making my wife a little nervous. I'll be. You say, I get in a nursing home. I'm not going to go into a nursing home. I'm going to be at home, and it's going to cost
Yeah.
$200,000 to have a caretaker here. And you want to be broke when that happens? I said, no, we'll save some for that, Barbara. Don't worry about it. But I really do. I want to have to say, no, I'm sorry, we're broke. I can't help your club or your organization. Knowing that I did all I can to share my wealth and the story behind it, and just be open and honest, and somebody gets that. I just can't explain how I've suddenly learned how I never hated going to work. There's days now that I work like Monday through Friday, Monday through Sunday for 2-3 hours. I go to the office and I'll go to a couple stores. I actually, when Monday comes around, I have that feeling that so many employees have. Man, I got a whole bunch of stuff on my plate. I got to speak over at Austin's place or do this video thing, and then I got a dinner meeting with this guy, and I'm not liking all this stuff. I never had that before. It was just, I'm not saying I was jumping up and down. I was, oh, man, it's Monday, let's go. I get to put in 10 hours and cut meat and get my hands all bloody and wait on some trade that isn't always nice. I mean, I just loved what I'm doing, and it wasn't a goal. It was a soon-to-be understanding that I could be the best in the world at this. Not as a goal, but as an understanding. I can really do this. I'm not very smart. I mean, I had the finance piece of our company. Sometimes people ask me questions about profit to debt ratio and sales to debt ratio, and I just fumble my way through it, and I say something. I'll just say, I don't understand it, and I don't want to. A profit loss statement, I can pick up the important parts of it, but too much of it, math, just is not one of my things. So be humble. Understand your strengths and your weaknesses. You have not arrived. You're growing. You're either green and growing or ripe and rotting, and you don't want to be that guy that thinks he's arrived. And
yeah, thanks so much for being here, Dave. This was really good.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We sincerely hope that you learned something today. And as always, we appreciate your support and hope that you can all find a way this week to pay it forward.